That's another thing with BMWs. On an engine and gearbox, there's a long shaft points out the front of the gearbox, and it goes slightly into the back of the engine. And there used to be a bearing in the flywheel in the back of the engine to stop it going like that, because obviously it's a long shaft. It only has a bearing at one end. It's going to wobble. But on Peugeot 107s, I don't know about other cars, they don't have this bearing in. It makes it a lot easier to separate the engine and gearbox and put it back together, because you don't have to align the bearing up and locate the shaft in it. Well, align the shaft up and the clutch and everything, put it all together. It just makes it easier. But with a BMW, it'll be a big heavy gearbox and a big heavy engine, and if you have to separate the engine and gearbox to take the timing chain off, you may not be able to do it in the car. I mean, with a Peugeot 107, you can take the upper cross member off the front of the car so that you don't have to lift the engine and gearbox as far to get it out the car. But you might be able to do that with a BMW, but it's a long engine, so whether you'll be able to get it out at an angle, you'd probably have to take the engine and gearbox out of the car to separate them. And then your spigot bearing could cold weld to the flywheel and the gearbox input shaft. That doesn't happen very often, but that was a question in conversation at college. The lecturer said a mechanic went out to a car, the clutch wasn't working. He said it was stuck in gear, you press the clutch in, and the clutch wouldn't disengage. The pedal went down, the clutch mechanism worked, but the engine was locked onto the gearbox input shaft. He says, what was the problem? I says, I thought for a while, nobody said anything. I says, had the spigot bearing cold welded onto the flywheel and the input shaft, I thought it's not going to happen, but that's where it happened. Cold welding does happen when the parts aren't lubricated, because they're not lubricated, aren't those bearings? No, there's no oil in the flywheel, in the hole in the flywheel or on the end of the gearbox shaft. They're cold welded. It heats up and welds. It's called cold welding. It actually gets hot, but it welds. There's friction welding. That's the same principle. They put two shafts together, spin one way and spin the other way, and the friction makes them heat up and weld.